From the Aishin Broadcast Studio, it's the Executive Spotlight.
Welcome to the AutoSuccess Executive Spotlight. I'm your host, Brian Ankney. Today, my guest is Nick Askew from Space Auto. Welcome, Nick.
Thanks for having me back.
Yeah, we're glad to have you. And we've got some really good topics. I'm really excited to talk to you about full AI desking. Tell me about it. What is it? How does it work? What does it do?
Well, AI is the buzzword of 2024, right? So, it's a great question because, I think we're just on the verge of what AI and artificial intelligence can actually do for dealers and just businesses in general right now. One thing I want to get out of the way, though, is that anything that we design and anything that we see people creating, it's not to put dealers and employees out of jobs, it's to help give them superpowers. So we're really excited to be able to bring this. But in a nutshell, so what it allows us to do is automatically work a deal using millions of data points in the most profitable way, in the quickest way, because we know that people don't want to spend 4 or 5 hours buying a car. We already know all of that information. So it's looking at the credit, looking at the vehicle information, looking at the lenders, and making the best decisions that be best for the customers and most profitable for the dealership.
Now, I imagine, so if I'm buying a car from you and you're the manager, like what is changing in the process? Like, as far as the way that you would work my deal, like what involvement would you have, and how did that change your process and my experience?
Yeah, so traditionally, in the way that AI works, right, and there's this classic computing, which is, think about Microsoft Excel, right, and that's your classic algorithms and your calculations and everything. Well, AI is really good at decision making, which is, what computers haven't been good at for many years. So now think about all these different pieces of data and how hard a job is for a sales manager or a salesperson or a finance manager or anybody that's selling a car. They have all of these different data points to look at. They've got credit, they've got the vehicle, they've got the trade, they've got what banks to send it to, what is the customer's needs, what do they what are they most likely to say yes to, because we're still salespeople, right?
Yeah.
But we don't have time for that because we've got 13 windows open. We've got 8 deals working. We've got all these people coming in and out of the sales tower, and we're trying to work a deal with them. And what that does is slow the process down. What we're trying to achieve is really to, as much of a paradox as it sounds, build technology to help move technology out of the way, allowing us just the time to be human again, help solving problems for people and building connections again.
So what you're saying is the desk manager might be able to get up from the desk and go interact with customers, take TOs, and kind of like the good old days.
Well, they're your best communicators, right? When all of the people that, and generally speaking, this is how it works. You're a salesperson, you're really good at that. Then you go into F&I, because then you're the strongest closer. So they want you touching every customer so you can sell them product and you can, help seal the deal. And then you get promoted to sales manager, which, colloquially are termed as desk managers, right?
Yeah.
In the name, desk manager. What do they spend all their time doing? Sitting behind a desk. You've got your best communicators and your best closers sitting behind a desk, never actually communicating with a customer. And a great sales manager can look at, maybe, thousands of deals over their, over a year, and, tens of thousands of deals over the course of their lifetime and career. But if we were able to analyze all of those deals and, all of the lenders and every piece of data that we have and be able to construct deals automatically, knowing what that customer may buy, what that customer may be willing to pay, what's a great vehicle for them, it just allows them to spend less time behind a computer filling out information and actually get back to helping take that TO that they desperately need to and get those salespeople trained rather than just, loading their lips and saying, go say this. They can get really involved with the process.
Well, I mean, I wanted to ask you how it impacts profitability, but I mean, it sounds like if you can get your best people out on the floor interacting with customers, it's kind of a no-brainer. I mean, it's got to increase profitability, right?
That's why I wear this t-shirt, I hold gross, right? Because, there's a misconception that if you allow technology to start making decisions for you as a dealer, you lose the ability to, be in control of your own paycheck. That's just not the case, right? And like I said earlier in the interview, we want to build technology that gives people superpowers, right? So, how can we handle more customers? How can we increase our volume? How can we build a deal really quickly that's profitable? How can we build a menu presentation really quickly that's profitable? All of these things are the same decisions that we're making and going through. And we still have the option to be able to present that to the customer. We're not taking the human out of the equation. We're just taking, all of the manual entry and legwork out of the equation so you can get to the customer as quickly as possible. So, no, what it does to profitability is two things. Gets your best closers back out there. But if you start analyzing this big data, and this is really one thing that's very interesting, is that you start to be able to run calculations based on what we like to call lifetime customer value, right? I don't want to sell you a car one time and make $10,000. I do, but, actually what I really want to do is sell you 5 cars and have you come visit my service department every 3 to 6 months. I want to sell your wife a car. I want to sell your family members a car. I want I want to be able to build a business in the community, right? That have you come back again and again and again and build that relationship with you. Brand loyalty is at an all-time low, right? Especially in Gen Z and people younger than me. They don't care about sticking with the brand. So making that impression and building that relationship is even more important than it used to be. Back in the day, Chevy buyers were Chevy buyers. It's not the case anymore, right? So what we want to start looking at, and a really interesting data point for dealers to start looking at is how much is this customer making me over the course of their entire lifetime in the relationship with me? Because it might not be, let's make $10,000 on this one car deal. It might be, let's make a little bit less, because we know that in a year's time, in 2 years' time, or when that trade cycle's up, they're going to be able to come back, they're going to be able to trade that car in, they're going to keep it longer, they're going to keep their service contracts, they're not going to cancel them, we're not going to get chargebacks, they're not going to refi with the local credit union because we tried to high gross them. We're able to take control of that business. So I really think it can do a lot of great things for overall profitability of a business, because we've not got the tunnel vision of just looking at the deal. We've got the broad landscape of data to be able to say, hey, this is a customer that we want to have a relationship with for a long time. What's the best thing that we can do for the business?
Wow. Well, yeah, that makes great sense. I mean, you definitely want to get as much repeat and referral business as you can, and it sounds like by understanding that customer better, you're able to give them the type of experience that's going to lead to that.
Yeah, exactly. No, there's a shift going on in consumer behavior, right? But we don't necessarily want to be, as dealers specifically, we've got all the power of this data that can be harnessed. Right now, one of the biggest problems is that it lives in multiple pieces of software. So it's really hard to make that. We're a product of our own environment. We have F&I managers making decisions on their portion of the deal. We've got sales managers making decisions on their portion of the deal. Fixed ops and service making decisions on their portion of it. They're not thinking about the broad landscape of the entire customer journey. Yeah. Right.
Well, I want to talk to you about there's kind of a cultural shift going on right now in the way that we communicate with our customers and make information available to them, especially digitally. Tell me what you're seeing from your perspective and what you see coming in the future.
Yeah, so it's really interesting. So we actually did a study and started looking at a lot of different dealerships and a lot of different vendors, actually, and website vendors. And actually, year over year, lead submissions, classic lead submissions on dealership websites, not just automotive, but we're talking power sports, motorcycles, everything, about an average of a 30% decrease. Now, this is classic lead submissions. This is the, hey, check availability for me. Hey, is this still in stock? Get my best e-price. Someone will reach out to you. Because that's not helpful to anyone anymore, because customers know that what's going to happen, I'm going to submit my name, my phone number, and my email address. A salesperson is going to call me and say, hey, I've got a 3:45 appointment and a 4:15, which one works best for you? I'll have it gassed up and ready to go. Let's go for a test drive. It's not how people want to buy cars, right? On the flip side of that, what we've seen is a 35% increase in people getting deeper into the process during digital retailing, which shows us that people want to do all the boring stuff at home, right? Like we said earlier, no one wants to spend 4 or 5 hours buying a car. They actually want to make it a more seamless experience. Dealers don't want to do that either, right? But what customers actually want to do is be a little bit more in control of the process themselves. They're the ones at home doing research. They're finding out which car to buy, where to buy it from. Your website has to be your best salesperson, and it has to give the real data and real information and allow the customer to get as far through the process as they want. Now, they're not all just going to digitally sign and say, hey, come deliver my car. But they want to at least get as far enough through the process so that you can set the expectations and meet them when they get to the dealership. And that's the shift that's happening, is customers want to be more, no pun intended, in the driver's seat, right, as they go through the process. What dealers have to do as a response to that is stop seeing them as leads, right?
Yeah.
You know, because those leads and those, you know, get my best e-price leads, you know, they're not the Glengarry Glen Ross leads. They're the, you know, they're the leads that, you know, people just wanted to, you know, get past a roadblock on the website.
Yeah.
You know, so the important thing is for dealers to respond to that is stop treating them as leads and start treating them as the beginning of a car deal. You know, and the customers, wherever they decide to pass the baton, we're taking the data that we have from that customer and their profile and everything that they did online, and we're bridging the gap of that experience. And no matter where we left off, we're just continuing the car deal.
Presented from the Aishin Broadcast Studio at Babcock's Media.
I mean, I definitely could see that being the way things are going. I mean, nobody likes to go to a car dealership, test drive a car, find out you can't afford the payment.
No.
You know, and enough, that's happened to a lot of people. And, you know, and it's also, if you're not positive which car you want yet, it's really hard to learn that if you have a salesman who's trial closing you. You know, the whole, could you see yourself owning this car? Well, I'm not sure, you know?
Well, because, I mean, no,
You know?
we're consumers are smarter than we give them credit for, right? And we know, you know, we know what's happening during the sales process. And they immediately have their guard up. And car dealerships, you know, historically, you know, they're known for wanting to take control of the situation. When I started selling cars, and I still remember it to this day, right? My process was the same: is you meet and greet, fact find, inventory selection, walk around, new product presentation, you go for a test drive. Can I get you a coffee? Let's negotiate. Let's go back and forth. Let me get this thing wrapped up for you. Peel them off the ceiling, see what they could buy. You know, that is a process that is not necessarily a reflection of how consumers want to buy. And I'll tell you this, if I knew that I had an 800 credit score on the phone, calls me, I've got a paid for trade, I want to pick up that truck tomorrow, can you have it ready for me? Manager's going to break process right there and then anyway, right?
Yep.
So we're used to breaking process, but we're not used to being able to give that flexible experience to people. So, you know, I think that's the thing that we have to remember now, is that there's lots of different ways to buy a car.
Yeah.
Right? There's lots of different problems that we need to solve for people, whether they're, you know, worried about their trade value, whether they're worried about if they can afford it. You know, we don't need to trial close them. The customers really, if you listen to them enough and you give them a great digital customer experience and in-person customer experience, they'll tell you how to close them. I think that's just true in business in general. People will tell you how to close them, and you've just got to listen and respond to that and be able to provide that service.
Well, you mentioned the 800 credit score with a paid-for trade and wanting to come in tomorrow. That's a great segue to the next topic I'd like to discuss with you.
Okay.
Your new credit modeling. Tell me how that scenario might be more possible today.
So, going through a sales process traditionally, you are in a situation where you test drive a customer, and you said something earlier about, you go through this entire process, fall in love with the vehicle to find out you can't afford that. The number one cause of a poor customer experience is unmet expectations. So you build that excitement, and then it's like, oh, it's not only can you not afford it, if you could afford it, it would be twice, double the payment that you can actually afford, right? Yeah. So we actually have introduced a new way of trying to think about a car deal and trying to think about taking care of customers in a digital customer experience, right? And you think about the Ritz-Carlton, right? And I love using them as an example of customer experience because they're not thinking about what you need right now in their process. They're thinking about what you're about to need, right? So let's take that, for example, and turn it into a car dealership buying process. So we have over 400 pieces of data on every of age American in the United States, including deceased people, which is great for risk, and it causes a red flag for us if someone's trying to buy a car that's been dead for 10 years.
Yeah.
But we have 400 pieces of data on everybody. And this includes segments such as, their economic cohorts, their income, their credit score, their debt to income ratio. Do they have available income to be able to spend? What is their ideal monthly payment for us to be able to get an approval? The list goes on and on. We also couple that with their market data. What kind of vehicles are they actually interested in? Historically, what have they bought? What does their family look like? Do they have 3 kids? Are they, 60 years old, empty nesters, and they, used to have a minivan, but now it's time for mama to want a Corvette.
Yeah.
Those are the kind of things that we, take into consideration here. Not to mention, we couple that with, analyzing everything that they looked at, viewed at on the website and advertising. So we've got this whole picture of the customer journey before they even submit a lead, right? So then they get onto the website and they start going through, let's say they go through digital retailing, or they come into the dealership and you just put their name and phone number in. It's not a hard pull. It's not a soft pull.
Yeah.
It is anticipating the next step, right? So if we know their credit and we know their needs, we already have the bank programs because we're integrated with S&P, right? So we know all the bank programs, the incentives, we don't need to submit to the banks. We already know. We know their vehicle. We know their equity situation. We can automatically build a deal specifically for that customer that's profitable for the dealership. If it's not profitable, we can help figure out which vehicles would be profitable or which vehicles would actually fit their desired payment. And we can stop the wasted time of spending a couple of hours doing your fact finding and going on a test drive of a vehicle that they could never afford, and actually be able to help bridge the gap between what's possible and what is actually beneficial for the customer. Can't tell you how many customers that blew out of my dealership just because they had to go think about it, right? But what really happened was that they fell in love with a vehicle that they couldn't afford.
Yeah.
And then you went and showed them something that actually fit their budget or fit their needs. Well, they had to go and think about it because they, ultimately didn't get what they want out of the situation.
Yeah.
So whether you're a 500 credit challenged person with a little bit of negative equity that needs some help, or you're an 800 with a paid for trade that wants to, that's an empty nester that wants that Corvette, at least we're allowed to now proactively be able to help make some decisions. And it's not for being creepy to customers and understanding that data. It's so we can provide really good customer service to people. That's it.
Well, I mean, and you said it too, like, no customer wants to come in and spend a couple hours to find out they can't afford the car and then start the process over again. Right. I mean, if as an industry, our goal is to get away from these 4 or 5 hour dealership visits, helping them to find a car that will fit their needs that they can also afford earlier in the process will definitely help to make that happen.
Yeah, and we can do that wherever they decide to buy. If they're an online buyer, they're hybrid buyers, they're just in the store, it doesn't matter. If we can have that information on that customer, it just allows us to be able to have the right conversation at the right time, rather than arbitrarily going through a process because this is how we've always done it. Right.
For a dealership that's kind of armed with this data, like where does that kind of enter into the process? I mean, is the salesperson aware of this, or does the manager communicate to the salesperson, like, show them these vehicles? Like where does that first start?
The way that we've built it, because we understand that every dealership is different, that's completely toggleable as far as because I've got some dealerships that are end to end, cradle to grave. They're a salesperson, but they also handle the paperwork. They're not the F&I manager, but they get consultation from them. But they handle the entire process, including the product presentation, right? So it's beneficial to them to have the entire piece, the entire spectrum of data. I do have some dealerships, however, that want to consult their salespeople. So we make that completely customizable. Now, in my recommendation is that I love to have salespeople see this information because it helps them craft a narrative back to the customer when they're responding to them, even if they're coming in online, right? What they see is, hey, traditionally, Steve puts in a lead on a Nissan Altima, but then what you actually find out is Steve's looked on the website for, vehicles that fit a family of 4 under $25,000. He's also looked at this vehicle, this vehicle, this vehicle, and it seems that his debt to income ratio is a little bit too high right now. So he's probably got an objective of lowering payments, getting something that his family can fit in. That is an incredible opportunity for a salesperson to go and use that data to solve problems for customers. Again, entirely up to the dealership how they want to implement these things, but I'm a big believer in transparency for your salespeople and empowering them to use that data for customer service.
Well, I was going to ask you about profitability, but again, I think you already answered my question. I mean, if the customer has a better experience, you put them on the right car at the right time, you get less I need to think about it. I mean, it has to lead to enhanced profitability, right?
It does. It leads to enhanced profitability for 2 reasons, because you're taking care of the customer, but then you also have the ability to maximize every call. I know your credit, and I know the calls that I'm going to get from the bank, right? And I know what vehicle to put you on. We're still in control of the deal as dealers. I just maximize whatever I need and put you on the right vehicle rather than try and get you on a really expensive vehicle that I have to bottom out just to get you bought, right?
Yeah.
Because that's what happens ultimately. You put someone on a too expensive vehicle, you have to discount it just to get the yes. Or you have to get the down payment out of them, or you have to put more in the trade or whatever. And ultimately that ends up eating into the profitability of the dealership.
Yeah.
Right? So if you do the right thing at the right time, you're going to get the profit that you need, not just on the deal, but on the entire customer lifetime value.
Nick, that's been a great interview. Is there anything more you'd like to share with our audience today?
No, I think, look, here's the deal. We are in the very infant stages of artificial intelligence. The things that I'd love to say to dealers is, one, don't be afraid to go and explore, the opportunities that are out there to, learn from this data. double check your processes to make sure that they are catering to a shorter and more direct customer experience. People that it is in the data, people want to get further through the process online, right?
Yeah.
That's what they want. Doesn't mean you lose control, but people want to do it. Don't wait for your OEMs, to be able to tell you, what's co-op approvable. Go and do that research yourself and be an innovator as a dealer principal, as a general manager, as a fixed ops director, whoever you are. Go and look for ways to make the customer experience better, and use the data that's around you to be able to help just craft a better customer experience. And that's what's going to help dealers be prosperous in the future. You've got companies out there, you've got the Goliaths like Carvana and CarMax that invest millions, if not billions, into a digital customer service, right? Mm-hmm. Your independent dealers, and sometimes even your OEMs that aren't part of giant groups with 100 stores, don't have the ability to be able to invest the time and money into those kind of experiences, right? So it's up to those people at the store level to figure out a way to try and innovate, to be able to to compete. They are the David in the David versus Goliath of these large these large retailers, but the David versus Goliath story, David wins every time. So that's what I'm really hoping for dealers, is they take that into their own hands and they go, okay, what can we do to offer this kind of experience as well? Allow customers to get deep into the process. And my advice for all dealers is don't treat them as leads. Treat everyone as a car deal. Assume the sale. Pick the baton up just where they left off and keep them moving.
Well, thank you for coming in today, Nick.
Oh, it's a pleasure as always.
Hope having you back soon.
Yes, absolutely.
And thank you for taking the time to join us for this AutoSuccess Executive Spotlight. I'm your host, Brian Ankney. Today, my guest has been Nick Askew from Space Auto. Please join us for a future episode. This one's Over the Curb and Burning Gas, or where he's from, busting bugs.